Heavy metal is very lame. I know it's blasphemous coming from a metalhead to be talking about how lame he finds heavy metal to be, but I have a point I'm trying to make. So I got into metal when I was in my teens, and I mostly listened to 80s, 70s heavy metal. I actually have some albums here. I was gonna go take a walk after this, so this is what I like to listen to, types of albums, right? Just to prove that I do in fact know what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, I mostly listen to the 70s and 80s heavy metal. I have branched out into the 90s. I listen to most pretty much Pantera and Alice in Chains. I consider to be heavy. I have been meaning to listen to Type O Negative, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But whenever I tried to get into modern heavy metal that my friends would send me, it always sounded very cookie cutter, very conformist, if you will. Like if you listen to modern pop music, I would say heavy metal is the current brand of heavy metal is basically the same. It's very much formulaic cookie cutter music. In the past few years, I've discovered I've discovered 3 bands that I like in 2 years. Warning, Infinity Song, and Die Spitz. Which for someone who listens and plays music, as you can see, is not good, because anybody who's really into music would be constantly looking for and discovering new artists to find. But I don't. Not because I don't try to, but because they just don't interest me that much. Granted, there are good artists out there, they're just not mainstream artists. So, there is part one of the problem there. But I also think that bands now, or musicians in general, aren't particularly innovative, or that they're really trying to come up with something new. And this isn't necessarily to say that they're all bad just because they make stuff that I don't like. What I'm saying is that from what I've noticed, there doesn't really seem to be any differentiation between these different groups. If you were to take 2 different metal bands, let's say from different eras, like let's say for the 70s you take Black Sabbath and Judas Priest, they sound different from each other. If we go to the 80s, we can say that Metallica and Dio sound different from each other. Pantera and Alice in Chains sound different from one another. Linkin Park and System of a Down, not System of a Down, I was System of a Down, Muse, let's say, yeah. So Linkin Park and Muse sound different from one another. And I can't really speak for any genre after that, because not any genre, but any metal band, I can't really speak for them because they all sound very similar to one another. They don't really seem to be trying to differentiate from one another. I can't really tell you why, because I'm not in a band and I'm not into super heavy metal that comes out now for the reasons I just stated. But I find it very odd, I suppose. Yeah, odd that there are so many groups that don't differentiate each other now. It's also kind of odd when I find that there are people that complain about this, that metal back then was better than metal now, because the reason why seems so obvious to me, which is that nobody's trying to be different. Metallica sounded different from Iron Maiden, and both groups were successful because they had differentiating styles, so you know who was who. It's not just the name, it's not just who's playing, it's also what it is that you're playing. If you look at the glam metal part of the 80s, everybody after the first wave, with the exception of Guns N' Roses, tended to get more similar. They wore similar clothes, they wore similar kinds of makeup, they made similar kinds of music. You know? Like, what's the difference between Poison and Warrant? Or what's the difference between Cinderella and Britney Fox? There's really not any difference between them, and that's the same thing that's going on with metal now. It just seems to me that nobody's realized it yet. That it's just happening over and over again. Which is why I've always been of the opinion that heavy metal just isn't interesting anymore. It's really a timepiece. I love old school heavy metal, but it's not gonna come back. One, because you can't really repeat what's already been done, and two, because nobody's really trying to make it unique, right? Because there are certain things that are being left out of modern metal. You know, like melodies and choruses and riffs. You know, everybody just chugs, which is fine sometimes, but it's not interesting if everybody does it. Also, screamo. I know people hate that, but the only other way I could describe it is Cookie Monster singing, so deal with it. But yeah, everybody does the screamo thing for every song now, which I never understood because I always thought it was more of an effect. Like, you ever listen to that Judas Priest song, Halls of Valhalla? That section where Rob starts doing the growling thing or whatever? To me, that's where it should have stayed. It's an effect, it's not something that should take over the song. It's like Kirk Hammett using the wah pedal all the time. Like, it's fine a little bit, but too much, it just gets really boring. And that's how I feel about it. But yeah, heavy metal is just not very interesting if everybody's just gonna keep doing the same things over and over again. And if you're gonna keep it that way and argue that, you know, it should change, well, you can't really be surprised when it starts to die out. Like, I think it's making a comeback, but it's only gonna make a comeback if people recognize that something like this here, where there is a discernible style and sound, and there's actual song structure within each song, works better than trying to reheat Pantera for the millionth time. That's pretty much all I have to say about it. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. See ya.